not remember me, I am Jor-El. I'm your father. Even though you've been raised as a human being, you are not one of them. You have great powers, only some of which you have discovered.
A man gets older and he thinks very differently and things get very clear. And there's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me? Who's got you?
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Who are you?
A friend.
You are revealed to the world, but you still must keep your secret identity.
Why?
Your enemies will discover the only way to hurt you by hurting the people you care for.
I don't know who you are. Just a friend from another star.
Is that how a warped brain like yours gets its kicks? By planning the death of innocent people?
No, by causing the death of innocent people.
Mind over muscle.
They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the light to show the way. For this reason above all, I have sent them you, my only son.
Hello, everybody. This is Jacques.
And this is Biff.
And that was the trailer for Superman, arguably one of the greatest superhero movies, because if that doesn't do so incredibly well, it takes, that was a big roll of the dice. They wanted to see if there was a real appetite outside of kids who read comic books would go see that movie. And what director Richard Donnor and Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder were able to do really helped launch everything that came after that. Because
and not just that, but it put Otisburg on the map. So
dude, thank you. It will always hit home for Biff and I. And I mentioned that because this is my tribute sideshow to the great director Richard Donner, who Biff is going to pretty much be in the back seat of. Is that safe to say? Or
back seat? It's like more like the back of the the theater, audience theater kind of thing, right? So that's really sure.
So I mean, it starts with Superman and Richard Donner. Fun. Biff, you might not know this. He basically directed Superman 1 and 2 at the same time, but got fired. Or Superman 1, and he was directing Superman 2. He shot a lot of Superman 2 while shooting Superman 1 because he had the sets for Krypton and all that stuff. But there was a pissing contest with one of the executive producers, and he got fired off his movie, much to the dismay of all the major cast members.
Wow.
And it wasn't until 2006 that the Richard Donner cut finally, because of fan outcrying, got released. It got released the same day Superman Returns by Legendary Pictures came out in the theater with Brendan Roth, because Superman Returns takes place right after Superman 2, as if Superman 3 never happened. And they only did 3 movies. Some people say they did 4 movies. I say they only did 3 movies, and they stopped after 3 because they wouldn't want to diminish what greatness they had. But anyways, Richard Donner, this amazing director from so many genres. Of course, Superman 2, but he was also, you're the horror guy. Where do you rank the Omen?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I just had that conversation with the son, but Omen is the bridge between The Exorcist and everything else that kind of followed, right? Because you had The Exorcist around 72. I think you mentioned that Omen was 77. So
76, yeah.
76, I'm sorry. And so unless you consider Rosemary's Baby, that's, to me, that's more of suspense. But really, I think there was, I think that's the jump. And then obviously everything else, we kind of went into the thrasher direction in the 80s, right? But I think that was almost like that was kind of marked the end of that that type of kind of classic horror movie,
Right.
just because we didn't have, it was really a horror movie without all those special effects, right? So
So here-
obviously Exorcist tried, but
But so here he is, a king of the horror genre with The Omen. 2 years later, his next picture is Superman.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to do, I mean, I don't know where you rank, The Goonies. With your age, that was probably wasn't a big movie for you.
Yeah.
But it did huge at the time,
Yeah.
and it has stood the test of time. It's one of those movies where we could do a whole sideshow on that, or Joe could do a whole sideshow on that. But it's a classic movie. I actually saw it for the first time with Joe a couple of years ago, and it's funny because
really? That's weird. Okay.
Yeah,
Ryan's in it, right?
Dude, I keep wanting to make a list of movies you would have thought I seen, and Goonies is way up at the top of the movies you would have assumed. Blade Runner was enough, so I finally saw Goonies. But so he does this quintessential horror movie. He basically starts the superhero on the big screen thing, because you look at what was out there at the time in the TV shows and Adam West Batman, the mid 70s, things like the Hulk. I mean, you can't hold that into what Superman did. When they said you're going to believe a man could fly, people in 1978 thought a man could fly. I mean, that's how amazing the graphics were for that.
Yeah. And I think and the other thing it did is, like, there weren't that many. I mean, franchising is kind of commonplace now, but aside from James Bond, I mean, how many essentially movie franchises were really there until something like that came along? I mean, there's a difference between something like, say, The Godfathers, which had sequels, versus an actual franchise, right? Because things like Superman, you could do endlessly, because, hey, we are doing it endlessly. I mean, sure, different guys playing it now and whatever, but you could span generations with that kind of franchising. And that, I think, in a way, maybe Superman 1, 2, and 3 also kind of gave that, gave rise to the the whole not the original, but the Tim Burton's Batman run. Obviously it wasn't all him, but yeah. So I think there's a few.
So speaking of Richard Donner and franchising, his next follow, well, not his next follow-up, he did the toy, which is funny because Richard Pryor was in Superman 3, and then he does the toy. He did the movie Lady Hawks, but then he creates the Lethal Weapon franchise. The Lethal Weapon franchise is his. He did 4 Lethal Weapons. Talk about a franchise. So you got the Omen and horror, you got Superman in that, you got the Goonies, the kid thing, a beloved, essentially, kid coming of age movie, and then you got the rated R buddy cop movie that he does for. Then after Lethal Weapon 1, his next movie after that is one of my favorite movies, not one of my favorite Christmas movies, but Scrooged.
Yeah,
and
amazing
it's
movie,
funny,
right?
We were just talking about the script that I've just done, and I literally based the main character in my mind. I had him not just Bill Murray, but specifically Bill Murray from Scrooged, put in this. So honestly, when you go, the more I started reading about him when he passed away a few weeks ago, it's like, oh, that's right. I forgot how many things I grew up with that I loved. I loved the Lethal Weapon movies when they came out. Scrooged, I know I'm a big Goonies fan, but he made his bones. He learned his craft directing Gunsmokes and all those through the 50s, and then in the 60s he ended up directing. So he did the Western ones. He did like the dramas, like the Playhouse 57s. He did Gilligan. He did a few episodes of Gilligan's Island. He did a few episodes of Get Smart.
Well, I see Kojak and Petrocelli in the to and Canon, right? Streets of San Francisco, classic TV crime shows, right?
Right. So he takes what he learns in Canon and pours that into Lethal Weapon on the big screen. He takes what he learns into Get Smart and puts it into
Oh my God, he did Banana Splits.
Dude, how fucked up is that? He did an episode. Right. Like so you know,
does Joe
and then
want to do a Banana Splits sideshow, because Banana Splits is pretty amazing.
It is. Well, let's put a pin in that, because we'll talk about what the Five Nights at Freddy's people have ended up doing with Banana Splits.
No.
But yeah, but the fact that he ended up also directing some Tales from the Crypt episodes. And then I'm like, I didn't remember, and I should have maybe remembered, he helped launch the X-Men stuff.
Oh, okay.
You know, the X-Men. Well, what's interesting is when I was reading about that, it's like, oh shit, he was a producer on a on some X-Men stuff that his wife was executive producer on.
Oh, okay.
His wife, on her own right, you know, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Dave that I love. You know, the presidential look-alike who has to go in for the president.
Kevin, what's his face? Kevin.
Oh, you're gonna kill me with this.
The one that's married to Phoebe Cates. But yes.
Yeah. So she, she does that. She did Free Willy. She did Pretty in Pink. She did one of management's favorite movies. Have you ever seen the Martin Short movie Three Fugitives? It's Martin Short and why am I blanking on his name? He was in 48 Hours with Richard with Eddie Murphy, the other guy.
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte and Martin Short did this movie called Three Fugitives. It's one of her favorites.
Wait, Martin Short did Three Fugitives and Three Amigos. Is that what you're telling me?
Right. Yes. Okay. Yes. But so this husband and wife team. I went down the list. You know, she did Semi-Pro, the basketball, hijinks movie. Also was a producer on Deadpool. So I'm surprised that, when I said, hey, let's do a Richard Donner thing, I would have thought because of things like, maybe the Omen or the Weapon, you would have.
I'm not a movie. You would have. Yeah. I mean, these aren't old hockey players, Jacques.
But it again, as I was reading the bios and remembering, I knew he did many of these movies, but it wasn't until I sit down and start like putting down the things I wanted to discuss. It's like, wait a minute. He launched this genre. He helped launch that genre. His wife was a big part of different, genres. But I will tell you, I did not know the Gilligan's Island, the Banana Splits, the Get Smart stuff. I just knew the whole Superman thing in the saga with Superman 2. And he essentially shot 75+% of the movie when they threw him off the movie. And they didn't credit him. That became a big legal thing, became a buyout thing.
Oh my goodness!
But people knew for years. They're like, hey, is there really? And I don't know if it was a non-disclosure because he never really talked about it publicly. But there was rumored that there was this very, very long scene on Krypton. With Jor-El, played by. Marlon Brando played Jor-El, and would it ever see the light of day? And it did. It sat in a vault for 30 years before, 20+ years before it finally saw the light of day. And thank God it did. It's great. It's most director's cuts are better than the movie because you're getting the one guy's vision. Not the one guy's vision and then the team of people at the studio,
trying to sell the product, right?
It's like, oh, we got to cut this because
it goes through a sales process, right? So it kind of that happens, right? So
and did you see the Lady Hawk or the toy? Do you remember the toy?
I saw the toy, but that was a long time ago, and it's been a while since I've seen it. I think
Brewster's really come out before or after the toy? Brewster's Millions.
Brewster's Millions. I thought it was before, but I might be wrong.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. But his wife had passed away a couple years ago, and so and you just look at the body of work and like the crossover. But I didn't. I was I Scrooge is another one. It's like, yeah, that's right. I knew he did Scrooge, but I forgot that I knew he did Scrooged. So again, we don't have these tights and capes and masks genre as we know it now. Without that, we don't have, the whole, the Lethal Weapon thing, the Omen. I mean, he and every retrospective that I saw or heard, this guy was active for 50 years, and you've never heard bullshit. You know what I mean? He wasn't a scumbag at the time if there were scumbags.
Right.
And by this point, you would have heard it. You know what I mean? Over the last 3 or 4 years, you would have heard it. Like, sure, he did all this, but I heard he was a little handsy on, Margot Kidder, or, in Lethal Weapon, he kind of was, this or that. So it seems like he was a decent guy, but I don't know.
And I think it's kind of interesting that when you go back to those two franchises, right? Because I think that even though it's rarely named, I think Superman 2 is one of those movies that are arguably better than the original. Like I personally preferred Superman 2 over 1. And I think I could say the same for Lethal Weapon. Like I think Lethal Weapon 2 I enjoy more than Lethal Weapon 1. So
it's funny because I agree too. I like 1 for certain reasons, but 2 is the better movie. Yeah. And there's a deleted scene that they took out of Superman 2 when I wish they had kept that in when Lois basically tricks Clark into admitting that he's Superman. Right. She pulls a gun out. Like there was something. I won't go down the rabbit hole. She was pretty convinced. He came up with a story, but she had her doubts. So there he is in his Clark Kent outfit, and she pulls a gun on him, and shoots him. Yep. And then he does the catch the bullet thing and says to her, it's like, and then the music changed. It was so great, like the way it went from no, dun, 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 dun. And when he turns around, when he falls back, when he shot his Clark, Christopher Reeves was a fucking hell of an actor. Yeah. And in that moment of turning, you can see him going in real time from Clark Kent to the Man of Steel. And he lectures her. It's like, what have you been wrong, Lois? And she's like, you mean with a blink? And then he goes back to kind of Clark Kent, like, oh shit! Like she freaked me out, like she was he was playing chess when she was playing chess when he was playing checkers, and it goes back to almost being Clark. And it's a 30-second scene. I'm like, oh, but maybe that's one of the reasons he fought over that. It got taken out, but anyways. So, like I said, this was going to be a short sideshow. Yep. But I cannot. I mean, who doesn't watch Superman once a year? Who doesn't watch the Goonies once every couple of years? Who doesn't watch Scrooged every Christmas at least twice? Now I'm going to go back and specifically find that Banana Splits episode, and maybe we'll do a deep dive into that.
A deep dive into Banana Splits. Nice.
So, like I told you on last week's podcast, when I said to Joe, hey, maybe you can record some self-indulgent theater. She's like, well, you can do some. I think I just did. I think this Richard Donnor sideshow is the longest self-indulgent theater. And thank you for going on this ride with me, Biff.
No problem. Yep.
You will believe a man can fly.